What if history as we know it only began after a great flood, and before that an entire advanced civilization thrived, only to vanish without a trace? It is a thought that feels like the beginning of a dream, as if the story of humanity has a hidden chapter sealed away beneath the weight of water and time. For thousands of years, cultures across the world have carried stories of a great deluge. The Hebrew Bible speaks of Noah, chosen to preserve life inside a wooden ark as waters swallowed the earth. In Mesopotamia, on clay tablets buried in desert sands for millennia, we find the tale of Atrahasis, a man warned by the gods to build a vessel before the flood. In India, ancient Vedic texts tell how Manu was guided by a mysterious fish to survive when the oceans rose. And in Greece, storytellers remember Deucalion and Pyrrha, who floated in a chest until the waters receded, leaving them to begin the world anew. How extraordinary that peoples separated by oceans and centuries all whisper of the same thing, a flood so vast that it ended one age and began another. Were these stories born from local memory of rivers overflowing, of storms that terrified ancient villages, or are they fragments of a deeper truth, passed down like a scar across humanity's earliest memories? Modern science has revealed that, around 12,000 years ago, as the Ice Age came to a close, glaciers melted, and seas rose by more than 300 feet. Entire coastlines disappeared. Vast plains that once carried rivers, forests, and perhaps even cities now lie beneath the waves. If humans had built there, if they had thrived in ways we do not yet understand, their homes would now be hidden in the silence of the seabed. Imagine, for a moment, an ancient society before the flood. People who watched the stars, who built monuments in stone, who mapped the seas long before the first pharaoh ruled Egypt. Perhaps they had myths of their own, songs we will never hear again, written in scripts that dissolved when the waters rose. The ocean is not empty. It is a vast library, holding secrets we have barely begun to read. And so we ask, are the flood stories only allegories of morality, of sin washed away, and life reborn? Or are they memories of something real, an ancient catastrophe that swept away not just people, but an entire chapter of civilization? If that is true, then our history books tell only of the survivors, while the first builders and the first dreamers rest beneath the waves, forgotten. But who were they? Where did they come from? And what signs, if any, remain of their existence? Stay with me as we begin the journey into their possible origins. And if this mystery keeps you curious, let this video play until the end. Leave a gentle comment of where in the world and which time of night you are listening from. And, if it feels right, subscribe so you can drift with us through the next forgotten chapter of history. To search for the beginning of this mystery, we must step back into a time when the world itself was unstable. Around 12,800 years ago, the planet plunged into what scientists call the Younger Dryas. It came without warning. One moment the Ice Age was ending, and the next the Earth froze again. Temperatures dropped sharply, glaciers advanced, and storms scoured the land. The change lasted more than 1,000 years, and in that time countless species vanished. The mammoth and the saber-tooth were among the last of their kind, leaving only bones as reminders. For the people alive then, survival became a daily trial. Archaeologists study this period through layers of soil, pollen, and stone. To them, the Younger Dryas is evidence of how fragile the balance of climate can be. Some propose that meltwater floods disrupted the oceans, others that a comet or asteroid sent shock waves through the atmosphere. Whatever the cause, it was a rupture, an age when the old world ended, and a new one was forced to begin. Many myths of destruction and renewal may have been seeded in this very trauma. Centuries later, hints of forgotten knowledge began to surface in unexpected places. One of the most intriguing lies on a fragile piece of parchment, known as the Piri Reis map. Drawn in 1513 by an admiral of the Ottoman fleet, it depicts the coasts of Europe, Africa, and South America with surprising accuracy for its age. But what unsettles researchers is the outline at the map's edge. It resembles the coast of Antarctica, not buried under ice, but drawn as if open and free. Modern geology tells us Antarctica has been covered by ice for millions of years. Yet some parts of its shoreline might have been exposed more than 10,000 years ago, when climates shifted and seas rose. How, then, could a 16th century sailor have mapped such a coast? Piri Reis himself admitted he copied older charts, some perhaps centuries or millennia out of date. If true, the question becomes, who drew the originals, and how far back does their knowledge reach? Were these echoes of ancient seafarers, whose maps survived in secret, until they fell into the admiral's hands? And in Mesopotamia, long before Piri Reis, scribes pressed stories into clay that continue to haunt us. Among the oldest is the tale of Atrahasis, describing a great flood sent by the gods. Unlike later retellings, this is one of the earliest written accounts of catastrophe, carved into tablets thousands of years ago. It reveals that the idea of a world-ending deluge was not merely spoken but recorded, preserved with deliberate care. Such writing suggests that, even then, people carried memory of disasters so great that they believed only words on clay could keep them from being forgotten. When placed together, these fragments form a troubling picture, a sudden climatic shift that shattered ecosystems, a map suggesting knowledge from a time we cannot place, a story written in the world's first great script, recalling a flood that erased all before it. Each stands alone, yet together they point toward the same possibility, that an older chapter of human history lies hidden in the shadows of the flood. And if these myths and artifacts are not imagination, but echoes of something real, then one question rises above all others. Who were the people that lived before the flood? When the ice retreated and the Younger Dryas came to a close, the world should have been in ruins. Humanity, scattered in small tribes, was expected to slowly rebuild, planting seeds in the soil, hunting and gathering, learning once again how to thrive. Yet, almost as soon as the climate warmed, we find something that defies every expectation. On a hilltop in what is now southeastern Turkey, a place called Göbekli Tepe rises from the earth. Archaeologists first uncovered its stones in the 1992, but its true age has startled the world. 11,600 years old, it was built right after the Younger Dryas ended. Long before the invention of pottery, long before writing, and long before the wheel, hunter-gatherers carved limestone pillars taller than a man, some weighing more than 10 tons. These stones were not rough or accidental. They were shaped with care, decorated with images of lions, scorpions, vultures, and strange abstract symbols. The site is organized in circles, like sanctuaries of stone, as if the people who built them sought to anchor their place in the cosmos. Scholars struggle to explain how small, scattered groups could have built such a monumental complex. Excavations suggest the stones were cut from quarries hundreds of meters away and dragged uphill without animals of burden, without wheels, without metal tools. The sophistication of the carvings, the precision of the alignments, and the very scale of Göbekli Tepe whisper of knowledge we do not expect so early in human history. Some archaeologists call it the world's first temple. Others see it as proof that advanced forms of organization and spirituality existed long before we imagined. Half a world away, in the Pacific Ocean, another enigma rises from the waves. Off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia lies Nan Madol, often called the Atlantis of the Pacific. Here, on a reef surrounded by water, lie more than 90 man-made islets, built of basalt columns, massive stones stacked like logs to form walls, platforms, and canals. The construction spans centuries, but its origins remain cloaked in mystery. Local legends speak of twin sorcerers who levitated the stones into place, while oral histories tell of kings who ruled from this floating city. The scale of Nan Madol is astonishing. Some of the stones weigh 50 tons, cut and placed with no clear explanation of how they were transported. There are no quarries nearby large enough to supply them. No pulleys, no wheels, no cranes existed in that corner of the Pacific when the city was built. Standing among the ruins, one can feel the weight not just of stone but of unanswered questions. And Nan Madol is not alone. Across the world, megalithic structures remind us that ancient builders could move mountains. In Baalbek, Lebanon, lies the Temple of Jupiter, built in Roman times, but resting on a foundation far older. Among its base are 3 stones known as the trilithon, each weighing around 800 tons. Nearby, a single unfinished block lies in the quarry, estimated at over 1,000 tons. Even with modern machinery, moving such a stone would be a feat. How then did ancient builders transport and place them with such precision? Engineers debate the possibilities: sledges, ropes, earthen ramps. Yet, the question lingers like an echo. Did they inherit techniques from an earlier forgotten age? Artifacts, too, occasionally surface to deepen the riddle. They are called ooparts, out-of-place artifacts, objects that appear to belong to another time. In Iraq, a small clay jar with a copper cylinder inside has been dubbed the Baghdad Battery. Some researchers suggest it could generate a small electric charge, though its true purpose remains debated. In South Africa, strange metallic spheres have been found in ancient rock formations, perfectly round, with delicate grooves around their circumference. Known as the Klerksdorp spheres, they spark speculation about whether they are natural formations or signs of some long-lost craftsmanship. Even myths themselves sometimes feel like artifacts, passed down across generations, fragments of memory preserved in story. Among the most famous is Plato's tale of Atlantis. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written more than 2,000 years ago, he describes a powerful island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time. Atlantis was said to be rich, advanced, and proud, until its people fell into arrogance. The gods punished them, and in a single day and night of catastrophe the island sank beneath the sea. For centuries, readers have debated whether Plato invented the story as allegory, or whether he was relaying fragments of a real tradition, told to him by Egyptian priests who remembered a disaster from the distant past. Taken together, these monuments and myths weave a troubling pattern. Göbekli Tepe shows mastery of stone before agriculture had taken root. Nan Madol reveals a city of massive basalt blocks on the ocean's edge, in a place with no easy means to move them. Baalbek's colossal stones challenge our assumptions about ancient engineering. Ooparts spark questions about what knowledge may have been discovered and lost. And Plato's Atlantis offers a cautionary tale of a people undone by catastrophe, echoing flood legends across the globe. What unites them all is mystery. We see the stones, we hold the artifacts, we read the myths, but the hands that shaped them are gone. Conventional history tells us that human civilization rose slowly and steadily, from simple beginnings to complex societies. Yet, the ruins tell a different story. They suggest moments of brilliance, sudden leaps of ability, hints of knowledge out of place and out of time. And so, late at night, one cannot help but wonder, are these wonders isolated achievements of remarkable people, or are they surviving footprints of something greater? A civilization that once flourished before the flood, leaving only fragments for us to puzzle over. If you are listening, and feel a question rising within you, share it in the comments. Which of these mysteries calls to you most? The stones of Göbekli Tepe, the city of Nan Madol, the massive blocks of Baalbek, or the legend of Atlantis? Your thoughts might become the spark for the next story we tell together. Yet, some ruins appear older than the flood itself. Their weathered stones speak of ages beyond the memory of known history. Could they belong to a forgotten people, whose greatness was silenced not by time alone but by catastrophe? Civilizations, like living beings, rise and fall. And when we turn our gaze to the possibility of a people before the flood, their vanishing feels less like a slow fading, and more like an abrupt erasure. The question is not only how they lived, but how they died, and why we remember them only through scattered traces, carved into land and legend. One theory looks to the sky. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, just as the Ice Age was loosening its grip, something extraordinary may have struck the Earth. Across North America and Europe, researchers have found curious traces locked in ancient soil. Tiny diamonds formed under extreme heat, microscopic beads of molten rock, and unusual levels of platinum. Alongside them lies a thin layer of charcoal, as if fires had raged across continents. To some, these are the fingerprints of a comet or asteroid breaking apart in the atmosphere, raining fire and devastation. If true, such an impact could have ignited forests, melted ice sheets, and plunged the planet back into sudden cold. This might explain the Younger Dryas, that 1,000-year return to glacial conditions after the world had begun to thaw. For those who lived then, the disaster would have felt biblical. Skies darkened, animals vanished, and survivors scattered. A flourishing people, however advanced, could have been reduced to memory in only a generation. Others point not to fire from the heavens, but to water from the deep. As the Ice Age ended, glaciers melted, and seas rose by more than 100 meters. Entire regions were swallowed in silence. In Southeast Asia lay Sundaland, a vast subcontinent that once connected what is now Malaysia, Borneo, Sumatra, and Java. Rich in rivers and fertile plains, it could have supported thriving communities. Today, nearly all of it rests beneath the South China Sea. To the north, in Europe, a land called Doggerland stretched between Britain and the continent. For thousands of years it was home to hunters, fishers, and families. Then, as the seas rose, the land shrank, until it vanished completely beneath the North Sea. Imagine watching the tide claim your home, not just once, but every year, creeping higher and higher, until whole villages disappeared. To those who survived, it must have felt like the wrath of the gods, the punishment of the sea. Myths of great floods may be echoes of this drowning, passed down by those who fled to higher ground, carrying with them only memories of what was lost. There is also a darker possibility, spoken of in whispers among researchers of forbidden history. What if the disappearance was not only natural, but deliberate? What if the survivors of a great civilization were erased not only by disaster, but by the rewriting of memory itself? In every age, victors control the story. If a new people rose from the ruins, seeking to build their own order, might they not bury the knowledge of those who came before? Might history itself have been edited, leaving only fragments in myth and rumour? The earth itself holds scars of cataclysm. In the valleys of Washington state, geologists once puzzled at strange cliffs and ripples carved into stone. For years, no one could explain them. Then the evidence became undeniable. These were the marks of an ancient deluge, a flood so immense it carved canyons in a matter of days. Known as the Missoula floods, they were unleashed when an ice dam burst, releasing water from a glacial lake the size of several modern states. Waves hundreds of feet high thundered across the Columbia Basin, stripping soil, moving boulders like pebbles, and leaving behind a landscape of scars. If such forces shaped only one region of America, imagine what seas released across the globe might have done. Even ancient texts remember ages before the flood. In Mesopotamia, scribes wrote of the kings before the flood, rulers whose reigns stretched not decades but thousands of years. The Sumerian king list, inscribed in cuneiform, describes dynasties that lasted tens of millennia until the great waters came and swept it all away. Scholars debate whether these impossibly long reigns were symbolic or whether they hint at a deeper truth, that memory of a lost age lingered in records older than history itself. What makes this silence so haunting is how little remains, not great cities or clear chronicles but fragments only. A list of kings carved into clay, maps that hint at unknown coastlines, scars cut deep into the land, and ruins drowned beneath the sea. If there was a people before the flood, the forces that destroyed them did their work well. Fire, ice, rising waters, and perhaps human hands themselves conspired to erase nearly everything. And yet, silence is not nothing. It invites us to listen closer, to ask why so many cultures speak of floods, why geology carries scars of sudden disaster, why memory stretches back further than we expect. If you have stayed with me this far, I would love to hear what you think. Which of these forces feels most convincing to you? Was it fire from the sky, water from the seas, or something darker, a rewriting of history itself? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your reflections keep this search alive. If entire lands were swallowed by the sea, what knowledge, what stories, what truths disappeared with them? If a civilization once thrived before the flood, its legacy may not lie in walls we can see, but in the myths and symbols carried forward by later peoples. What survived were not whole cities, but fragments woven into culture, religion, and imagination. In Egypt, one of the oldest civilizations we know, the god Osiris was tied to water, death, and rebirth. His story tells of drowning and dismemberment, followed by resurrection, echoing the rhythm of the Nile itself. Each year the flood destroyed, then nourished, bringing life to the valley. For the Egyptians, this cycle became sacred, and Osiris became the divine reminder that endings lead to beginnings. Perhaps behind this myth lies an older memory, drawn not from one river's flood, but from the trauma of seas that once swallowed entire lands. In Greece, the legend of Atlantis shaped the imagination of philosophers and poets. To Plato, it was a parable of pride and punishment. Yet in later centuries it became more than allegory, transforming into the idea of a golden age lost beneath the waves. The vision of Atlantis inspired explorers, dreamers, and scholars for millennia. Even if the island itself never existed, the myth became a vessel, carrying the possibility of forgotten worlds into the heart of Western thought. Across the ocean, in the far reaches of the Pacific, the Moai statues of Easter Island stand as silent witnesses. Most face inward, watching over their villages, but a few gaze toward the sea. To many, they seem like guardians staring into the horizon, as though waiting for a homeland drowned long ago. The people of Rapa Nui tell of ancestors who came from across the waters, and the Moai may still hold that memory etched in volcanic stone. In the jungles of Mexico, the Olmec carved colossal heads from basalt, each one distinct, each bearing features that continue to puzzle historians. Their expressions are solemn, their helmets mysterious, their presence monumental. Some see them as portraits of rulers, others as guardians of sacred places. Yet their size and style suggest influence beyond what we expect of their time. They stand as puzzles in stone, reminders that human creativity may preserve fragments of older traditions even when memory fades. Even beneath the sea, hints of forgotten chapters emerge. Off the coast of India, in the Gulf of Cambay, sonar surveys have revealed structures deep underwater. Some argue they are natural, others see patterns too regular to ignore, walls, streets, perhaps even foundations. If true, they would predate the great Indus Valley civilization by thousands of years, suggesting human settlement along coasts long since claimed by the sea. And in the hills of southeastern Turkey, the story continues. Excavations at Göbekli Tepe have uncovered not only carvings of animals but enigmatic symbols that may represent the first steps toward writing. Nearby, at Karahan Tepe, newly opened chambers and pillars suggest the culture that built Göbekli Tepe was part of a larger network of sites, more complex and more ancient than we ever imagined. These discoveries remind us that the origin of civilization may lie not only in farming, but in faith, in gathering to carve dreams into stone before turning to seed and soil. All these legacies, Egypt's myths, Greece's visions, the Moai and the Olmec, the drowned ruins of India, the carved stones of Turkey, speak not of a vanished world, but of an inheritance that survived in pieces. And yet, perhaps their greatest legacy is not stone, but memory itself. The sea holds more secrets than the land. Even now, divers off the coast of Japan explore the Yonaguni Monument, a massive structure submerged beneath the waves. Its sharp angles and terraced steps resemble a pyramid, or a sunken city, yet some geologists insist it may be nothing more than a natural formation carved by currents and time. To others, it feels too precise, too deliberate, as if it is the last remnant of an age the ocean chose to hide. Whether nature's design or human creation, Yonaguni reminds us that the line between history and mystery is never as clear as we imagine. And so, we are left with a larger question. What if the story of civilization is not a straight line, but a cycle? What if humanity has reached its peak more than once, only to fall into silence, leaving scattered stones and whispered myths for the survivors to carry forward? The flood, the fire, the rising seas, all could be chapters in an eternal rhythm, in which growth and collapse follow each other, like night follows day. It is a humbling thought. Our skyscrapers, our satellites, our digital archives may feel permanent, yet the earth teaches otherwise. Cities can sink, languages can be forgotten, knowledge can be lost in a single generation. Perhaps the myths of old are not simply warnings from the past, but reflections of a truth that still applies to us now. And so, we must wonder, when the waters rise again, what part of our world will vanish, and what will remain for the next civilization to find? Will they puzzle over fragments of our machines, the way we puzzle over stone circles and broken tablets? Will they hear only echoes of our stories, or will something of us endure, carried like a faint light into the future? The ocean is vast, and the night is long. If this story brought you peace tonight, press like and subscribe to join us for the mysteries still to come. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where in the world you're listening from. Good night, may your dreams be gentle and your sleep deep.